Now the next thing we're going to talk about is the intercept form of a quadratic equation. And this is our intercept form. Here we have y is equal to a times x minus p times x minus q. Now again, this a term tells us if it's positive, our parabola will open upward. And if it's negative, our parabola will open downward. But this is called the intercept form because if I plug in p or q for x, y is going to equal to 0. Let's look at that. If I plug in p for x, I'll get y is equal to a times p minus p times p minus q. Well, p minus p is 0. So if I have y is equal to a times 0 times p minus q, it doesn't really matter what a, p, or q are because I'm multiplying them by 0. So y would just be 0. So if y is equal to 0 and I plugged in p and got y is equal to 0, I would have the point p0. Same thing if I plugged in q. I'd have y is equal to a times q minus p times q minus q. Well, q minus q is 0. So if I have y is equal to a times q minus p times 0, anything times 0 is equal to 0. So then you have the point q0. So that means p and q are x-intercepts because their y-coordinate is 0. So let's see how we can use this information to graph our quadratic equation. Here we have y is equal to 2 times x minus 2 times x plus 4. Well, notice these are subtraction signs. So if I rewrote this as y is equal to 2 times x minus 2 times x minus a negative 4, these negatives would cancel and we would get a positive. So that means my p then is equal to 2 and my q would be equal to a negative 4. So that gives us the x-intercepts of 2, 0 and negative 4, 0. Well, we have 2 points on a line, but that doesn't really give us our parabola. We know since our a is positive, we have a positive 2, that it has to open upward. But that doesn't help us too much. What we have to realize is because this is a parabola, it has a vertex and it has an axis of symmetry. So if this parabola has an axis of symmetry, that means that axis has to be halfway between negative 4 and 2, because these points have to be symmetrical on each side of the axis of symmetry. Well, halfway between negative 4 and 2 is a negative 1. So if I draw my axis of symmetry at negative 1, it will look something like that. Notice again, it's halfway between negative 4 and a positive 2. Now if my axis of symmetry is x is equal to negative 1, that means my vertex has the x-coordinate of negative 1. So if we want to find the y-coordinate of our vertex, we just plug in negative 1 into our equation. So if we do that, we plug negative 1 here into this y is equal to 2x, or 2 times x minus 2 times x plus 4. So we'll get y is equal to 2 times negative 1 minus 2 times negative 1 plus 4. If we simplify that, we get 2 times, well, negative 1 minus 2 is a negative 3, and then a negative 1 plus 4 is a positive 3. So 2 times negative 3 is a negative 6, and then times 3 again is a negative 18. So our vertex then occurs at negative 1, negative 18. So if we plot that, negative 1 is on our axis of symmetry, and it's at negative 18, which is right here. And we have these points, so we can see that our parabola is going to look something like this. And that would be our graph of y is equal to 2 times x minus 2 times x plus 4. Now, the last thing we have to talk about is the FOIL method. The FOIL method is for converting equations in intercept form or equations in vertex form into quadratic equations in standard form, where standard form is y is equal to ax squared plus bx plus c. So to get these equations into this standard form, we use the FOIL method. And the FOIL method, or FOIL, stands for first, outside, inside, last. So to use the FOIL method, let's look at our first equation. Here we have y is equal to x minus 2 times 2x plus 3. To do the FOIL method, we first multiply the first terms in each parentheses. So if we multiply the first terms in each parentheses, we're multiplying an x times 2x. Our next step then would be to multiply the outside terms in the parentheses, or the outside terms in this expression. Our outside terms would be the x and our positive 3. So we would multiply those together. Next we would do the inside terms, or the inside terms of this expression. So we'd have a negative 2 and a 2x. We would multiply those two together. And then lastly, we multiply our last terms. Our last terms are a negative 2 and a positive 3. They're the last terms in each parenthesis, so we would multiply those together. So if we do that, we take our first terms. We have an x times 2x. That's x times 2 times x. This becomes 2x squared. Next we do our outside terms. We have an x times 3. So this is a positive 3x. Next we do our inside terms. We have a negative 2 and a 2x. That's the same as negative 2 times x, or a minus 4x. And then lastly, we do our last terms. We have a negative 2 and a positive 3. That's just negative 6. So here we have our quadratic equation after we FOIL, or use the FOIL method. We should simplify this and add our like terms. We don't have any other squared terms, so we have a 2x squared. We have a 3x and a minus 4x. If we add those coefficients, we just get a negative 1x. And then we don't have any other constants, so it's just minus 6. So our equation in standard form then would be y is equal to 2x squared minus x minus 6. So now let's convert this quadratic that's in vertex form. The key to doing this one is to recognizing what this square means. I can rewrite this as y is equal to 2 times x plus 1 and then times x plus 1 again, because that's what the square stands for. And then of course we have this plus 4 at the end. Now first I'm going to multiply just these binomials together, and we'll come back to the 2 and the 4. And if we do that, we do our first terms. Our first terms are x and x. Well, x times x is just x squared. Next we do our outside terms. Our outside terms are x and a positive 1. Positive 1 times x is just plus 1x. Next we do our inside terms. Our inside terms are a positive 1 and an x. 1 times x is again just 1x. And then lastly, we do the last term in each parentheses. We have a 1 times a 1. Well, that's just a positive 1. Again, I'm going to combine these like terms. So we'll have an x squared, and then 1x plus 1x is 2x, and then a plus 1. Now don't forget that this is all still multiplied by 2 and having 4 added on the end of it. So our next step then will be to distribute this 2 inside the parentheses. So 2 times x squared will be 2x squared. 2 times 2x will be 4x. And 2 times 1 will be 2. We still have this plus 4 on the end, so if we combine this with our plus 2, our equation in standard form will be 2x squared plus 4x plus 6. And that completes our tutorial on vertex and intercept form.